Hello, welcome to another edition of the Fifth Quarter. I'm Mike Ciarochi, sports editor of the Herald-Standard newspaper, and I'm joined again by George Von Benko, author of Memory Lane and WMBS radio personality. George, welcome back to sunny, brisk Uniontown, Pennsylvania.
I am so glad to be home. I've been to 10 Super Bowls, and I don't know how you feel about it, but that's the worst Super Bowl in terms of the way the NFL had things set up that I ever covered.
Oh, I tend to disagree. I mean, I'm not looking to pick my worst, but I thought it was a very pretty well organized Super Bowl.
Well, apparently, you didn't have
some of the, it was spread out.
You didn't have some of the problems they had with the buses and some other things. There's no excuse for drivers not knowing where they're supposed to go.
No, true. But I will say this, and not necessarily on behalf of the NFL, but I do know that for Super Bowls, they bring tour buses in from all over the country. I remember when the Steelers were in Arizona, I rode a big tour bus by myself from the hotel to the Super Bowl, and the guy was talking to me on the way. We kind of became fast friends. And told me that he came in from San Diego. He didn't.
I know they
all
do
he
that.
was doing was going by a map that the NFL.
But shouldn't the NFL make sure people know the route where they're supposed and know where you're supposed to drop people off?
Well,
at the media gate.
They should also know how many seats they have to sell before they sell them.
That's true. So there were a lot of things that were, and then I got to be honest with you. I realized they couldn't control the weather, but to say that this is an aberration is not necessarily true, because when the NBA All-Star Game was held there, Gus Gerard, our good friend, was at the NBA All-Star Game. They had an ice storm and had the same thing happen, so this was a distinct possibility that this could happen, and they should have had some contingency plans for that.
I have a few brothers who live in the Metroplex, I guess you would call it. My one brother lives in Arlington, the other brother lives in Duncanville, a suburb of Dallas, and they both told me the same story. The road system in Dallas is elevated.
Yes.
Which is great for, the 360 days a year maybe that they don't have ice and cold temps. When you do get ice, it freezes up. And as everyone from southwestern PA knows, a bridge or an elevated road surface will freeze before a grounded road surface. The difference is in Dallas, they from what I gather, refuse to use salt on their roads, because the roads are in very good shape whenever they're clean. But
anyway, I hate to toss them under the bus, but there were a lot of things that went wrong that should not have gone wrong. Weather, excluding the weather. When you have people who are supposed to be the guides and security at different places, they should know where things are. And they didn't.
But you know what? For a first try, I'm willing to give the Dallas Metroplex a pass on this one, and I think the league is too. For one very simple reason: they sold more tickets, or they didn't finish with an attendance record, but they made enough money.
Well, that money may disappear with these lawsuits that's coming. That may have a big effect, but I'm not as forgiving as you are, because there were just too many things that went wrong at the media center and with the buses and with some other things for me to give Jerry Jones a pass on this whole thing. But that being said, it was a heck of a ball game.
Yes, it was. It was a tremendous football game. 3 turnovers by the Steelers notwithstanding. You can look at it and say the Steelers made mistakes, or you can look at it and say Green Bay made the plays. The Steelers chose the high road. Green Bay did make the plays.
They did make the plays, and it was, and even as badly as they had played at some points of the ball game, they had it right in their hands at the end. I mean, what you want the Steelers to have the ball with 2 minutes to go, and the ball in Roethlisberger's hands, and he's done it before. It just didn't happen this time. But the score wasn't 31-25.
Oh no,
the real score was 3-0.
Okay.
3 Pittsburgh turnovers resulting in 21 points. No Green Bay turnovers resulting in no points for the Steelers. And there were several tipping points in that ball game that made it turn out the way it did. One of them occurred right after the first Pittsburgh series on the punt that was fumbled by Green Bay.
Did not recover.
Our good friend Bill Priatko, who's a good friend of Dick LeBeau's, happened to be sitting in the stadium right in front of where that fumble occurred. His seats were there. Ryan Mundy had the ball. at the beginning. He saw him have the ball. The officials let the scrum go on, and as things turned out, by the time they Green Bay had the ball.
Yeah.
And that's a real tipping point, because that would have had the untested Packers back on their heels right at the beginning. Pittsburgh probably would have scored from that position on the field. That was a real tipping point in the ball game, I thought.
I think so too. I guess so. But you know what? It didn't go the Steelers' way, like a lot of other things in the game. So I mean, it's kind of water under the bridge at this point. I mean, you won't get anyone from the Steelers to complain about that, nor should they.
I'm not complaining either. I'm just saying, what if? That would have really set the tone right at the beginning of the ball game, and Green Bay would have been saying, "Whoa, what are we doing here?"
If Ben Roethlisberger takes a little bit off of that pass to Mike Wallace,
there's the other
Mike
thing.
Wallace runs under the ball, as they've done many times before.
There's the other thing.
It's a different ball game.
There's the other thing. I really, really, really thought, in talking to Bruce Arians and in listening to Ben, I thought that he was really going to have a breakout Super Bowl. The Super Bowl has not been his greatest stage.
No.
Yes, he did have that drive against Arizona. The game in Detroit, he did not play well, and he admitted that. It has not been his best stage, and for some reason, he just was not as sharp as he has been. He wasn't crisp with his passes. He wasn't sharp. And look at some of the missed opportunities. We talked about the overthrow of Wallace, which would have been a touchdown because he had the man beat. The play that resulted in the interception that was returned for a touchdown, yes, his hand got hit. Bruce Arians said, though, the unfortunate thing with that is Mike Wallace had beaten his guy hands down, and that probably would have been a touchdown.
If he had a step on the guy, and he's going to increase that lead on the defensive back.
And then there were several other missed opportunities. Heath Miller wide open a couple of times. Hines Ward on the last drive wide open over the middle when he threw the ball into the ground on that last drive. Just a lot of things that were uncharacteristic of the way the Steelers had played during the season. And I'm sure Ben, and he's the first to admit it afterwards, would like to have that second interception back. You needed to be a surgeon to throw that pass in between those guys.
I'll say this, though. I believe Ben Roethlisberger has 3 playoff losses now on his resume. After the first and the second, the first one being the New England game, I believe it was an AFC Championship game his rookie year.
Yes.
The second one, the Jacksonville game at home, a first-round playoff game, wild-card playoff game. After both of those losses, I'm sure you can probably figure it out what happened with the Steelers the following season. They went to and won the Super Bowl.
Yes. Well, and we're hoping that's going to be the case if they play football. That's the big if, because we got serious problems with the negotiations going on. In fact, I guess they canceled the meeting for today when we're taping this. And there are serious problems. I thought it was interesting. I was on a radio show on Radio Row in Dallas with John Clayton, our good friend John Clayton, who used to work for the Pittsburgh Press and is now one of the top guys on ESPN and a top NFL writer. He said unequivocally that he thinks that it's time that Roger Goodell reaches out to the Rooney family, in particular Dan, and to some extent Art, and gets them involved in these negotiations, because Dan Rooney has always been a voice of reason with the owners, and he's also been a voice that the players will normally listen to. And he says they have not done that, because he asked Dan directly about that. He also asked Art about it, and that's something that he feels needs to be done if they're going to get a deal done. He said there are several talking points where they can negotiate and get this deal done, and they're not being addressed.
I think a lot of the fans and a lot of the talking heads on radio, excuse me for that term, and television, are focused in way too much on the 16 or 18 game schedule and 2 exhibition games. I think that's just a negotiating point that was put out there by the owners and subsequently trashed by the players. that I think they can work something out with that. It's going to come down to money.
It is. Well, the problem with that is they're not adding any more money for the 18 games, and that doesn't make any sense.
They'll work that out. I tend to agree with the sentiment that says there's too much money at stake for both sides to lose for this to go on.
Well,
of course, we made the same argument before the last lockout.
That's true, and I think the 18 games are going to go away because I really think there is a safety issue there. They're having problems getting through 16 games as it is, and they don't. Yeah. They have to increase the roster, and they're not really talking about that too much either.
How about this for a compromise? How about if we go 17 games, 2 bye weeks, 2 preseason games?
Uneven schedule. Who gets the extra home games? You're not going to get the owners to agree to that because they want the even home games. I think it's right where it is. And if they want to eliminate one of the preseason games, I'll go along with that, but I still think the preseason games serve a purpose in some respect.
They do. Two is plenty, I believe.
Well, I would go with 3 and let it go at that. But we're negotiating right here. This is the thing of it is the off season is fraught with some interesting things with the Steelers. Now, one note: Ray Horton has already left, the secondary coach, to go to the Arizona Cardinals. The general feeling was, and everybody has reported, that Deshae Townsend, the former Steeler defensive back, was going to go along with Ray to Ken Whisenhunt's staff in Arizona. I can report after talking, and I'm not going to name names, but I talked to somebody last night, and Mike Tomlin has reached out to Deshae Townsend already. Do not be surprised if Deshae Townsend turns out to be the new Steelers secondary coach.
Okay. Speaking of the secondary, I wrote my column off the game off Sunday's Super Bowl about the secondary, and I think the point I was making was Green Bay used the New England blueprint for how to beat the Steelers' defense. They really picked on the secondary, particularly the corners. I think the Steelers' draft priorities have shifted based on the Super Bowl and the playoffs and this whole season. Everyone always complains about the offensive line. They're the whipping boys. I don't think there's a problem with the offensive line anymore. Marquise Pouncey has solidified a good bit of the offensive line, but Doug Legursky solidified the center position. I'm looking at it this way. Why not leave Legursky at center? He proved he can handle that. Put Marquise Pouncey at one of the guards where he can pull, create a lot more havoc. Then you have Max Starks coming back. You have Willie Colon coming back.
If they sign.
Yes.
There are problems there,
You may have Flozo Adams back if he decides to play another season. You have Trey Essex. You have a lot of depth there, a lot of guys coming back healthy. That means priority number 1 and priority number 2 is cornerback.
Well, I think the secondary needs to be, and I would even throw maybe a safety in there too.
Possibly.
Because, I think Ryan Clark had a nice season. Polamalu's been injured. I think you need to solidify that a little bit more with a younger player backing those guys up. If you're going to bring them back, they have to decide what they're going to do with Lamar Woodley. They have to decide what they're going to do. And the word is, our good friend Ed Bouchette has said that it looks like they're going to franchise Woodley, depending on what happens.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
With the labor negotiations. But, there are some things that have to be shored up. There's no question.
Yes. Ike Taylor, I'm not throwing Ike Taylor under the bus by any stretch. I think he's a solid number 2 cornerback. He shouldn't be a number 1 guy. He's not the main cornerback in any defense.
I think he played pretty well in some of the playoff games, and I think that there is room to sign him, and I think they should sign him. Right. Especially when you consider what else you got to work with in that secondary.
After Ike Taylor, there's such a drop off at cornerback that it's just incredible. And you know what? It's an amazing tribute to Dick LeBeau, Mike Tomlin, the entire Steelers organization that they got as far as they did.
Considering everything that
after the secondary had been exposed fairly early, maybe mid-season by New England, I just think it's a tribute to them that they got as far as they did. But it is what it is. It needs work.
It needs work, and then I would say after that, if you can get a lineman a little bit later on, I think you should do that because. Yes, these guys stepped up, but they are not,
and defensive line, Aaron Smith's health is going to be an issue now and has been an issue.
But I think Ziggy Hood answered that question big time.
Yeah. They need some help with depth, I would say.
I would say so too.
Looks like the clock is winding, George. Is about ready to wrap up this edition and this season of the Fifth Quarter. We will be back closer to the NFL draft with another edition of the Fifth Quarter. Until then, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. George, thanks for the good
thank you very
season
much.
work.
I've enjoyed it. Yes.
All right. And we'll catch you next time.